Here's a snapshot of what the whole internet looked like one day in October a few years ago. I really like this picture because it almost resembles a world, a planet of some sort. And that's actually what it is. Billions of people are rushing around in this world every day, doing pretty much everything what we do in real life. They're shopping, they're dating, they're educating themselves, they're booking travels, etc. And all the green stuff, that's Europe. Blue is Americas, red is Asia, and white is still white unknown spots of the internet. Probably like WikiLeaks or dark web or something like that, shady places of the internet. And this is the world where we have successfully stepped in as private individuals. With our smartphones, with computers, services, etc., we have moved into this space. We're now taking our professional us into this world. We're bringing our teams, our organizations, whole cities are trying to kind of merge into this place. Sometimes with, a little bit of friction. You know, the kids' toys, when you have a round stick that's supposed to go into a square hole, a lot of friction and frustration trying to get that old industry to actually fit into this new digital space. And with this kind of digital layer on top of the physical world, we started to see how industry after industry got disrupted by new ways. It started probably 15 years ago with Google coming in with their huge kind of vacuum cleaner, sucking up media budgets from all kinds of consumers, disrupting our newspapers and televisions and TV stations and things like that. And a while later, we saw how the service industry got disrupted. For instance, in recruitment, when LinkedIn came in with their vacuum cleaner and sucking up recruitment budgets from all over. And after that, we started to see how Amazon and Alibaba swept the shopping streets and the shopping malls for the consumers' wallets in ways that we could not have imagined, and started to shape the way the city actually looked. And all of a sudden, cash disappeared, and the banks got disrupted, and the characteristics lines outside of the cash machines on a Friday afternoon all of a sudden disappeared. And it started to shape the way we see a city and formed new ways of working. And all of these industries have before kind of created a smart city. A city has always been smart when culture and food and entertainment, commuting to work, logistic, transportation, etc., kind of forms a web of a smart city. All of those industries have now kind of transformed into something else, coming together in the city and in our lives, creating a new kind of a space. And that's what we will need to design for now. And we're seeing that all over the world. This is a fantastic image taken from a satellite far up at a night sky. Of course, it's not in this digital space. It's Foursquare in this case, a little app where you can check in to places around the world. When you check in, you can get points. You can even become the mayor of these places. So disruption is coming, beware. But when we're looking at these phenomena, all of a sudden, what we actually have is a new infrastructure, a digital layer on top of the physical world, providing us with a lot of meta information. All of a sudden, we start to understand what kind of places do we have here? What do people think of them? Who has been there? Who's there now, etc. And what Foursquare can do is that they can dive in and zoom in to all of these places. And for instance, have a look at New York and see how the check-ins are spread out based on different categories. And they can also make this come alive during a day, where you can see how people in the mornings are checking in over the subways and bridges into the yellow workspaces of New York. Around lunch, the recreational area of Central Park starts to emerge, and after a while in the afternoon, people are going into the nice green restaurants, having a good meal, and a little bit later sneaking over to the other side of the street into the blue nightclubs until New York is totally blue. And then even the New Yorkers get a little bit tired, have a little bit of a green snack before even them are going to sleep. Kind of a beautiful visualization. But the level of insights here are, of course, tremendous. If I'm about to open a restaurant or close a street or build a bridge, of course, I want to have a look at this map too. The flow of the city, the data generated by the individuals, not just the flat normal map that I usually look at. And if you dive into those servers and look at the data and see what it represents, there's so much stories hidden there. I really love this ad from Spotify. Dear person who played Sorry 42 times on Valentine's Day, what did you do? You can learn so much of the behaviors of your audience if you dive into the servers, reflect a little bit about those data points, and see what they can teach you. Unfortunately also, this can be put together in big orchestrations. I had the pleasure of visiting Huawei's city control center in Shenzhen, where you don't only control the traffic, but also the citizens in a very effective way that we need to be kind of aware of. But this digital layer also brings a new layer from our own eyes perspective. With augmented reality, we can start to see information about the city, transportation, timetables, Pokemon Go trolls, or perhaps we can start to see the future over here, or we can dive into the past. And all of these things are kind of new tools for city development. When we started to build the internet a bit more than 20 years ago, we kind of took all the phenomena of the real world and translated that into digital. We took mail and made email. We took site and made website. We took commerce and turned it into e-commerce. After a while, we've been now through thing after thing in the physical world and made a version of it in the digital space. And created a whole new world up there in the clouds. Of course, the infrastructure up in the clouds are completely different. So all of these things kind of took a new turn, created a new version of themselves. Sometimes deeper, more efficient, or interesting than the original. And when we are now starting to design cities, I think it's time for us to kind of reclaim these things, kind of bring them back from the clouds and put them back to work for us in the city in the form of their new enhanced version. And in the same way that we designed the internet a while ago, we bumped into a lot of bugs. If you remember internet 15 years ago, a lot of bugs, it was very slow. And we are now entering a new pioneering area when we are adding that layer also in the physical space. It will not be an easy ride. A lot of the world's words will mean one thing to us now and another thing to us later on. But we are in a transition. There will be bugs, we need to endure a lot of things, and probably it will be worse before it will get better. This is similar thing from China, so don't mind a few voice every once in a while. There might be another kind of mayhem coming. But all of these things are not just physical or digital things. They take on new characteristics. Speech, for instance, when all of these things becoming Internet of Things, they start to talk. I had the privilege of being part of a project taking a decision on a new language. That's not every day you take decisions on new languages. But this time it was the language that all cars will start to speak to each other in, regardless of brand. And then you might think, what will they talk about, all of those cars? But of course, if I'm out driving and all of a sudden the car up there, bam, slams the brakes. Of course, I want that car to tell my car that, oops, sorry, we're in a little bit of a situation here. Can you please tell your driver to take it a little bit slower before the next turn? Great conversation. Of course, I want my car to have those kind of conversations with other cars. And as soon as I realized that, I realized there will be a lot of small talks around the roads. And there will be whole highways of conversations. And as soon as I realized that, I also need to start to think about how will that affect my company? How could I take part of that conversation? Because if the car over there all of a sudden spots a piece of ice, if I'm out running my snowplow, of course I want to participate in that conversation, because that will make my company more efficient and my brand more relevant. And if I'm designing a city, of course I want to be part of that conversation and create my own voice in the ecosystem of the things. And this is kind of turning us into a new kind of digital, where the cars and things are starting to talk to each other and having conversations with Waze and navigating tools in order to find the most effective way forward based on traffic. And the car will, of course, reserve a parking spot with some sort of a garage somewhere, and at the same time have some negotiations with some lunch places for a good deal for me at lunch, and the restaurant will talk to my bank about the payment. Me as a human, I will kind of float on top of some conversations made by the clouds. And I will need to be a little bit careful who's actually designing those conversations, because that's my steps, that's my decisions, that's my left or right deciding where to go. And moving that into the city, we are moving into a more intense digital way, but where I think that digital will actually start to disrupt itself, where digital will start to kind of disappear, and at least from the vision of our eyes. And when the algorithms and machine learning things are working high speed over there, taking away every kind of click, we'll free ourselves from the screens and the booking dialogues and the eternal clicking around on websites. And the only thing that eventually will be left is the human. And we need to start to figure out, what does that mean? If we can no longer rely on the easy, soft, simple conversations, do I go left or right, or what are we having for dinner, etc. And I really need to step up and be only human all the time. That might mean something to me. And also taking that into the city design. When we're moving into kind of a new blended world, where we're moving away from the online and offline. I mean, 15 years ago, it was really clear that I listened to a little small song from my modem, and all of a sudden I was online. I then carefully logged out, not to block the landline, and I was back offline again. If I'm out running, listening to Spotify, am I online or offline? I don't care. I'm in a new kind of blended world where digital and analog things are composing the world around me. And that will be the new tools for city design. Creating a city with all the powers of the digital space in combination with the physical, enhancing the life of the people. And it's that kind of world I would like to peek into, starting to see what will that mean going to work, hanging out with friends, connecting with the community. What will the culture be like in this city? What will the culture be like in other cities if strong tools of digital is enhancing the way of living? It might mean a lot depending on what kind of digital system you apply on your city as a new digital layer. That will definitely affect life. And these cultures, in combination with analog design and digital design, that's really what I would like to explore more during H22. And I think that's kind of the role H22 has in politics, to move our image of what the future might look like, and hopefully a smarter city in the future is a more human city. Thanks.
Hey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was listening to your talk and both inspired and a little worried. You started out by talking about friction. And I'd like to say what's the opposite of friction is lubricant. What are the types of lubricants we need in order to transform and make this change happen?
Well, I think transforming an organization or transforming industries, we need to kind of step away from the big launches, the big shifts, because that might work in the old days. I mean, it was possible way back to kind of form in groups of boardrooms and take decisions. Like in autumn of '87, the Nordics will move into VHS. And the Nordics did. We kind of followed. Now it's kind of the opposite. The users are taking all kinds of new weird behaviors upon themselves, and the companies are trying to run after, adapting to that need. And I think
so it's the end of the era of big cheeses.
It's exactly, and we need to find kind of the early adopters, the ones that can take some friction, that don't mind some bugs, but kind of thrive in the innovation, and let the rest remain a while with the cash machines and the nice stuff that we're used to. And when the first early adopters have fixed those first bugs, made a smoother process, then they will be let into the new stuff as well.
I sound unnecessarily old as I feel very young, but is this a generational issue? Do you think our early adopters are younger, or is it a mindset issue?
I think it's definitely a mindset. Some of our most fantastic speakers at Hyper Island, for instance, are almost as old as me.
I'm going to go no comment here. This is dangerous territory. But in Hyper Island, do you see that as your way to identify the pre-troops that will lead the way? Or is it an educational ground? Everyone that comes has the potential?
I think everyone with the curiosity, with the passion, with the will to change, and who gets a tool set to actually go from also will to do. I think that's the biggest skills now, because we're moving also from the kind of knowledge organizations where we knew a lot of things, and we now need to move into the learning organizations where it doesn't matter how much we know, but how good we are at acquiring new insights and learnings from all the observations around us.
I was listening to a fascinating thinker in the space of learning, and he was saying, which frightened me a little because it seems quite hard, we first need to unlearn.
Yes, and learning is so easy compared to unlearning, because when we unlearn, we need to discard the hard earned experiences from our previous lives, and the value that we have kind of built up in our knowledge base, and be able to identify what in that knowledge, what in all of my experience are actually now harmful to my decisions and harmful to my environment.
And that requires a special type of ego or non-ego to allow yourself to shelve the things that you previously bragged about, that was the core of your CV, and now realizing this is actually hindering me.
Yes.
And my colleagues.
And when we're moving into these kind of new pioneering areas, as we're doing now, we need to understand that we also shift in the organization from delivery, optimizing, fine-tuning, to explore. And when we're in explore, we need to embrace failure, because it's in the failures that learnings are generated. And from that, we will be able to take the next step. And
luckily, we have the privilege that you and I will be failing together.
Yes, fantastic.
So we both sit on the National Advisory Board of H22, and we will be put to the test. This is not just talk. We will walk the walk together with the city. And I'm very honored to unlearn and learn with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Fantastic.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mikael.
Thank you.